Hi. Welcome to the Dave Munson podcast. Thank you. This is episode 3, and we're going to talk about parenting today. Appreciate you listening, and I, of course, encourage you to share this with your friends and family. I think I'm onto something good here. We're going to have a lot of really helpful stuff for mental and physical health for adults as well as youth. And I am fortunate to have a wonderful man here in the studio, in my home studio, a fella that I interviewed once before on Farm Talk, and that was on the phone. So here we are in person doing video. And I have Dr. Don Gordon here with me, who is a parenting specialist. Thanks for coming over, Don.
Oh, glad to be here, Dave.
Yeah, this is great. When I first heard about what you do, I was like, that sounds real important. I'm sure we may talk about how to reduce the incident of divorce, because I'm always like a root guy. But if you're going to do divorce, boy, you sure will benefit from talking with somebody about how to do it right.
Yeah, it's life's second most stressful event, and doing it without guidance is foolish.
Totally. And for the viewers, I want you to know that I'm entertaining this new theme and possible book title of Putting Your Children First. Subtitle, Without Putting Yourself Second. And so putting your children first seems to tie in precisely with a parent wanting to do divorce correctly and with the needs of the child in mind. So it seems like the shoe fits to have you here talking about your parenting classes. So how long... can you start off with, I guess, your credentials and how you ended up going into teaching?
Okay, I got a doctorate in clinical child psychology and became interested in parenting because I knew the research shows that what's the most effective thing for kids when they're starting to have emotional and behavioral problems is to be able to work with the parents to skill up their parenting, to improve their parenting. And that was very, very successful, and I started teaching that in graduate programs at Emory University and Ohio University to PhD students so they could go out and do the same thing. So that was really helpful. I was excited to do that. I got a chance to work with a lot of bright, creative young people, and spread the message that parenting skills can be fairly easily learned.
Yeah, that ties in with this new book title, which is if taking care of yourself, putting yourself first as a parent equals taking care of your children.
Yes.
So that's exactly what you're talking about. So. Yeah, you were saying that earlier when we were talking that when there's a child that's having a problem, your first thought is like, let's work on the parent, and the parents, I guess, lead the way. They set the tempo, they set the feeling in the home. They're the ones that make suggestions for what the kids to do and don't do. And I took a parenting class when I was a young parent. And I can't remember what it was called, but it was about giving energy to what you see that they're doing that's right, as opposed to putting so much energy into busting them when they do the wrong thing. So you can almost ignore that what you would call negative behavior, but whenever you see them do something that seems good for them or good for their siblings, you reinforce that.
Exactly, and it's human nature to respond to problems. And so if things are going well with the kids, like with the siblings are playing well, getting along, we tend to ignore them and do our own thing. And then we start paying attention when we hear the fighting and somebody gets hit. Then we jump in.
Yeah.
And the kids, especially the young kids, they live for our attention. That's what they want. So if we're only paying attention when there's a problem, they're going to show us problems so they can get that attention. And a lot of parents simply don't realize that. It's kind of like the attention trap.
Man, this is like forewarned is forearmed. I mean, ignorance is not your friend when it comes to being a parent. I mean, like, this is such a great example of just a little bit of knowledge could save you years and decades of misparenting. And then, I mean, if you have trouble parenting, then you're going to be harvesting difficulty for the rest of your relationship with your children, right? Like, now your
Right.
children have families, but they don't want you around because it was,
Right.
I mean, boy, start early.
Yeah.
That's got to,
But yeah, paying attention to the kids, as much as you can, and when they're behaving well, it's important. And paying attention to them when they're having problems is important. But it's really challenging now because in the last 5 or 6 years, the stresses on the average adult in the U.S. have gone up significantly with the pandemic, with climate change, with the political divide, with financial worries. That just keeps going up. And now we have about 80% of the adult population is experiencing significant depression or anxiety every day. Every day.
80% of the parents. What's
the
the
parents.
number for kids?
It's, higher than that. Kids are not able to, when they're experiencing depression and anxiety, quite often they don't have the vocabulary to tell their parents about that.
Yeah.
So they're not telling the parents, Mom, I'm scared, or I'm really worried, or I'm really stressed, or I'm confused. They often don't have that vocabulary,
Yeah.
partly because the parents don't either. And if the parents aren't using those words, the kids don't learn to use those words.
Right. And I can see how it would be easy for a parent to just be kind of accustomed to seeing their child as like this tense creature. Like, oh, he's just uptight. That's just how he is.
Mm-hmm.
But my take is always we are a reflection of our environment. So Jimmy's tense maybe because there's a lot of tension in his environment that he's taking on. So maybe the closer to the truth is that Jimmy is a sensitive soul and he picks up everything.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some children maybe have, denser screens or better shielding. Like my daughter's very open-hearted, and the kids at school knew that. So they knew they could attack her and she would react. Whereas some kids be like, like they already learned how to not let it in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it seems like you have to be careful that you don't want your kids to always be motivated by seeking praise, right? Like, oh, Mom, Dad, look, I just helped Johnny pick up his Legos. Oh, good. But, like that could get a little gross if it went too far.
Well, it's not just praise the kids like. They like our attention just being with them, like, going into the bedroom and just sitting down next to them in the bed and just being with them. That's very affirming for them.
Yeah.
And listening to them, being open to what they're saying and what they're doing and reflecting what you see the kids doing.
Yeah.
They feel that, that now they're at the center of our universe, and that's very affirming. And so it's just it can be a very simple thing of just spending time with them. But as I mentioned before, the stress on the parents is getting in the way of that, because the way our brains work, when we're stressed, when we're experiencing some kind of threat, part of our brain called the amygdala puts us into fight or flight, and we're not sensitive to anything going on with our kids or other people. So we're not even noticing our kids being stressed because we're in a fight or flight mode. So when you said the parents have to take care of themselves, that's exactly right. You've got to get yourself calmed down and out of fight or flight so you can pay attention to those people that you love, and you can be attuned with them emotionally.
Totally. Just to be present, be available.
Exactly. So that's being mindful, being mindfully present and taking care of yourself. You'll be much, much happier if the more you're in the present, the happier you're going to be.
I love, again, if just receiving these tips, tested, maybe things you learned at college, maybe things from your own life experience, but being able to share those with people, God, the value is so incredible. It wasn't till my kids were, once we got divorced, my kids were 10 and 12 when their mom and I separated and eventually divorced. And it wasn't until that point that I started getting like, for a while I got weekly therapy with this wonderful man who was a psychologist, counselor. And it wasn't till then that I became conscious of the need and the smartness of like you were saying, just going into the room with no agenda and sitting down on the bed, or sitting on the floor beside them with no rules to tell, nothing to try to teach them, just my open heart and my presence. And what's wild about that is it's not hard. I mean, what could be simpler than walking into the room and sitting on the bed next to your kid with your mouth closed and just waiting to see what they have for you?
Yeah.
It's so easy.
It's easy. If you're calm yourself, you've got to get yourself calm first before you can do that. If
Yeah.
you're in your head worrying, stressing,
Yeah.
and you're not talking, you're not going to be very attentive, and you're not going to be emotionally present with your child.
Right.
So just being quiet and sitting is not enough. You've also got to get yourself calmed down.
So if we want to talk about helping kids, we might as well just talk about the economy and the economic pressures on the family, because the economy, just like that song by Pink Floyd, money is the root of all evil. It seems like most acts of desperation, like horrible crimes, are driven by economic desperation. So both parents in the workplace, both parents having full-time jobs that maybe put them under stress and take them out of the home, that's an economic problem. So, that's not where you maybe, I mean, you must touch on that with your parenting classes and divorce, that, like I just wrote something the other day, like if you want to be a good parent, maybe you could reduce your monthly expenses and be able to be home more.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, the number one thing that couples fight about is finances. How money is being spent and wasted. And
that and the practices in the kitchen. It's like money in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But but with inflation and with the recession, finances are more of an issue, and there's going to be more fighting over that, and the divorce rate is going to go up because of that. So more families are going to fall apart, and so the kids are going to be more stressed because of that. So all the more reason to take care of yourself, and as you said, look for ways to save money so you're not fighting as much, with your partner about the money.
Yeah. I don't like being a doomsdayer, but when you do look at projections for where we're heading, at times it does look scary. And so that's why I feel like building and living in tiny homes is like, it's like the silent revolution. Like it's a way out of the 30-year loan. It's a way out of property ownership. It's a way to have only one parent work. I think it's just amazing, and we don't need 2 or 3 or 4 or 10,000 square feet to be happy. I lived in a tiny house for 4 years, and I totally loved it. My kids chose to live in the big, nice house with the swimming pool and all the nice luxuries, but I was very happy in a tiny house. It's on the same topic, just like. I think it's probably, I'm guessing it even would help in your parenting classes to teach like whole systems consciousness, like the awareness of the whole system and how every aspect of a system affects another. And something that comes to mind for me is if you can see that, the effect that the economy has and the pressures of the economy that they have on your family structure, then you would be more likely to work on solving those problems so that you can be home more for your kids. But if you just accept it, well, mom and dad both work full time, mom and dad are both stressed, and that's just how it is. I don't know, just knowing that there is another option. Oh yeah, I wanted to share that I've been a recipient of Obamacare for quite a few years, OHP, and what an amazing, I guess what do they call it, whole health care. What an amazing program that is. And I don't know what the numbers are, but I know they've reached tens of millions of families, 50 million, 100 million, I don't know. But OHP in Oregon and Obamacare in the country, because of the stress that it reduces from the family, I mean, nothing more stressful than like dealing with one of these big health insurance companies that treats you like dirt and won't answer their phone, and a quarter of your income goes to health care. It just dawned on me one day that Obamacare had the ripple effect of making total health care available for low income people. The benefits to our society as a whole are just almost endless. Like, it reduces crime, it reduces mental illness. It allows families to spend more time together because they're not having to spend so much money on health care. So that one program has brought health and happiness and peace, and the amount of good that is done for the family unit is just incredible. Obamacare, universal health care. So it's really cool to see how these things are all connected. And I'm guessing as a parent, it's just unfortunate that if you enter school when you're 5 and you leave when you're 22 and you go straight into a career and you don't leave till you're 65, you're potentially in a box from the time you're 5 till you're 65. And it makes it hard to and then there's the idea, like, who are our role models? I'm guessing that, like, for me, role models are important, my heroes. So in a parenting class talking about divorce, like where do people, maybe, I guess your parents are the most likely role models. Or if your parents miss the boat, then you'd be watching the grandparents. And I hear a lot of that because the grandparents were maybe more common sense based, agrarian, and then their kids went off to the cities to have a better life. And I don't know. Do you ever? I'm hogging the mic. I have a great habit of talking more.
Well, I'm a grandfather, so the topic hits me at home. I've got 2 grandsons, and it's so important to children to have access to grandparents. And grandparents they're a little bit more laid back than parents because they've been through the major stresses, and they're older, and they have a different life perspective, and they don't let little small stuff bug them as much as the parents are letting the small stuff bug them. So the grandparents can be more mellow, which is really going to benefit the grandchildren. And they've also had a chance to look back at what they did in their own parenting that they would do differently, and with their grandchildren they have a chance to do it differently. Yeah. So I have a lot of grandparents saying I'm a lot more patient with my grandchildren than I was with my children.
I think that's pretty universal, and that puts you in a really good place. Like bring on the grandparents,
right?
Because they're going to be, they're not going to be like stressed out, overworked parents. I can't wait to be a grandparent. It sounds like perfect for me. But it also speaks to living close to extended family, like having the extended family at least in your town or city, and not and that's another part of the American, the American disease, the disease of American culture that the kids go off to college and they decide they want to stay in Boston, and their family is in California, but now they're going to start a new life. So somehow we've lost, I guess in the past, extended families stayed close and tight, like potentially even in the same house, because it was mandatory. Like if you were going to survive, you had to pull together. You couldn't go off in the jungle, man and woman and a brand new child, and like, we're going to make a hut in the middle of the jungle and we're going to do it on our own. But in America, you can have a hut in the jungle by yourself, Many people do it. We try to do it on our own. And everything that you need is available to you because of your dedication to your specialized job within the system. But yeah, it just seems like sanity is going to come from having that extended family. And I've interviewed quite a few Italian people, and I love the stories of the Italian kitchen and the grandmother in the kitchen and the aunts and the uncles, and there's always something cooking. The kitchen is alive. The house is alive. In American commuter society with mom and dad both working, the house is dead. It's empty. It's a husk. And that is the family. And kids go to school, parents go to work, they come home in the evening, there's homework, the great intrusion, the great state intrusion into home life called homework. And it's just like, boy, we have so much to learn from our past social systems that worked for hundreds of thousands of years.
And the kids are on these a lot. You know, the parents are letting the iPhones be the babysitters.
Oh, I know.
And that's very compelling. There's so much compelling stuff on the internet and video games and all that and the kids want that. They seek that out. And so it's easy for the parents to just do their own thing and not pay attention to the kids.
My kids learn a lot on the internet, you know, and I'm sure they've seen things that they never should have seen, but I think my kids are drawn to doing a lot of learning on phones. But my kid's mom and we made the mistake of letting our daughter have a smartphone when she was probably 12 or something. And now I have so much respect for parents that were like, you want it, you buy it. Instead of like, we just got it, we just handed it to you. Here you go. All your friends have them. So yeah, I feel like, 16 or 18 should be like when a kid has the option to have a smartphone, and until then it would be a flip phone, because that way they can take pictures, they can talk to their friends, they can text, but they just can't. The video games available on flip phones are pretty crude. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've suffered that. It breaks my heart when I see kids walking down the street. Like Earth doesn't really matter because this screen is so amazing, and just walking through paradise glued to a screen. Don, I want to ask you to talk about your parenting class, like maybe specific, like go specific about your, putting the children first through the process of divorce. And real quick, I'm going to go ahead and read off your contacts. So Dr. Don Gordon, this guy right here, he's a parenting specialist, which you already heard. And Don does classes online, I guess, around the world? Or
Yeah, mostly in the U.S., but in some other countries too.
Okay. Do you also do any in-person teaching, or are you just not set up for that at this moment?
No. The in-person teaching, no. I did that before I moved from Ohio to Oregon, but I've been doing it primarily online since.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm sure it has its place, online teaching. It fits in with people's schedules and stuff. But anyway, so here's the contact info. It's divorce-education.com. That's Don's website. And then there's childreninbetween.com.
Yes.
Which is another set of courses or something.
That's the name of the program dealing with divorce, is Children in Between.
Okay, cool. And then there's a whole other site called parentingwisely.com, which is helping parents work with kids who have behavioral issues.
Yes.
Cool. So, yeah, I would love to hear. We didn't get a whole lot of history from you, like who you are, and like you have kids yourself. That was your start in understanding. Were you already a child psychologist? That's an interesting thing, right? Being a parent who is a child psychologist, man, that's like lucky kids, hopefully, depending on what school you went to.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we're gonna start, before I want to hear about the nuts and bolts of what you offer families in your, I guess it's children in between .com. Yeah, I'd like to just kind of hear some of the nuts and bolts of how you help parents navigate divorce. And I guess it makes sense you would speak to best case scenarios and then worst case scenario, right? Like the super aggressive parents at war, and then the parents that are co-parents all the way through.
Yeah, the way we teach is through showing video scenes of parents that are having conflict, that are very realistic, really good acting, and very relatable. We show these video scenes of parents having conflict who are divorcing, and we show the right way and the wrong way. And
Wow.
parents recognize themselves when they see the wrong way, like insulting the other parent, saying negative things about their character, with a lot of emotion. And then we show them the right way, where the parents are using some skills to communicate with their co-parent. And the purpose of the course is to teach skills by showing these video scenes. And people learn best by watching it being done in a realistic way than by being told about it. But watching it is more effective than telling somebody about the skills.
Totally, I get you. You watch a 15-second video and you just downloaded 20 minutes of talking.
Yes.
So they see it, and then once they see the problem behavior, then right after that, they see an example of how that same situation could have been handled with more presence and thoughtfulness and intelligence.
Yeah. In the Children of the Tween program, we show parents the 4 most common ways that they put their children unknowingly into loyalty binds, where they expect the child to be loyal to them and not the other parent. And that's a terrible bind for the child to be in, because they want to be able to love both parents and be loyal to both parents. The parents do this and they're not aware that they're doing it. Now, when they see these scenes, then they become aware that they're doing it, and then they stop doing it. I'll give you an example.
Nice.
Using the child as a messenger.
Yeah.
A dad will tell his son, I want your mom to bring you home early this weekend, because we have a party to go to with my bosses at my boss's house. So call your mom and tell her to bring you home early this weekend.
Yeah.
And of course, the kid doesn't want to have to do that, because he knows mom's not going to like that. So he calls the mom up, and she starts going on and on about the dad. No, I'm not going to do it. Tell your dad I'm going to bring you home at the regular time.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the child's a messenger having to go to the dad, and then he's mad. He goes on and on about the mom and tells call her back. And the poor child's a messenger. The parents should be talking to each other.
Yeah.
But they don't talk to each other because they don't have the skills to avoid a fight. But we teach them the skills to avoid a fight.
Yeah.
So they can talk to each other. Like, for instance, if you have a problem with what your ex is doing, instead of calling them names, you use an iMessage. You tell them how you feel about what they're doing and ask them to do something differently, politely. That's much more likely to be heard than blaming them. Much more likely.
And you're hoping that your I statement is going to change them from being this like kind of aggressive, cruel human, like instantly into someone, like help them to be able to hear you. And sometimes they can, and sometimes they will just continue walking over the top of you.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a lot of what you're teaching, I statements are awesome. I learned that through the Mankind Project, the New Warrior stuff. And I think I statements are awesome. Way to just bring it home and be real in your truth. And a lot of the time, what you're hoping for, like if, when two parents are communicating and they know that there's a lot of chance for conflict and fighting and yelling and all of that, that if you have the awareness that the option of shifting from your head and our great, powerful, rational minds to shift to your heart. I had this experience once where I called a girlfriend on the phone, We were far away, and she tells me she's pregnant, and I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, and so of course she's very sensitive to my reaction. Like basically she's got her volume all the way up so she can hear if my breath shifts. And I'm like, whoa. Like I wasn't like, oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. I was like, step back. And man, she took that and it was a giant trigger for her because maybe she had been ditched by men that had made her pregnant before. So next thing I knew, she was just like 30 feet tall. She had wings and claws, and she just got super, super mad. And so I yelled back. And so there we are yelling at each other on the phone, 600 miles apart. And somehow, I love these teaching moments that come from our spirit guides or from our higher self or whatever you want to say. But somehow I got it to shift into my heart. And so in the middle of that blow up, I said, this is just really scary. Like I dropped out of my head in that place of defense and battle to just like, gosh, this is a big deal. This is really, kind of scary. And it was so beautiful. The minute I could drop into my heart, she also dropped into her heart. And the fight was over. And the minute I said that, she's like, I know. I feel that too. It was so profound that we went from battle to understanding and vulnerability. And, so that's like a, another kind of step, tangent, parallel universe to speaking to the co-parent with I statements.
Yeah, and another skill that we teach is active listening, where you reflect back what you hear the other person say.
Yeah.
So they know they're being heard and they don't have to repeat themselves.
Yeah, totally.
And if you can guess at the emotion underneath what they're saying and reflect that back, then they know that they're being felt. Nice. And that's a really good feeling when you know that somebody understands your feelings and has accepted it, and that draws people closer, even though they're divorcing. So when the other person knows, expresses they know how you're feeling, you feel heard. And we all want to feel heard. And so that's a skill that people learn in addition to the I statements is active listening. And you've got to calm yourself down to be able to do that. You've got to get out of your amygdala, your fight or flight mode, to be able to reflect back what the other person said instead of counterattacking.
So that's a great segue to the power of deep breathing, like one big deep breath through your nose. Boy, I feel calmer. All it takes is one breath. So I don't know. Do you teach those skills?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Calming.
Yeah. That's
self-calming.
Self-calming. That's the taking the deep breath is the main way we teach it.
Number one.
The main ways.
Putting on some chill music. How about putting on some reggae?
Yeah.
Ooh, everything's going to be all right here in Jamaica.
And if you can take several breaths where you're only focusing on the sound of your breath and the feel of your breath and get out of your head, you will calm down and you will feel better and you'll be more effective when you need to communicate with somebody, with your child, your co-parent, with your boss at work, with a good friend. That just makes you a lot more effective. And it's so simple and easy to do. We have to remind ourselves to take a breath. And if you have time, take several. The more you take, the calmer you get.
Or walk around the block, right?
Yes.
Like just
some exercise.
Walk out of your office, walk down to the courtyard. And
get into nature if you can. The Japanese call it, forest bathing. Go into the forest and bathe in the forest. Just pay attention to your surroundings. When you're doing that, you're getting out of your head. When you're paying attention to your senses, you're getting out of your head.
Yeah. So something I saw on your website was talking about the damage that's done to children when they witness fights, their parents getting into fights, and that cortisol levels rise, and it can take 72 hours.
Yeah, to get out of the system.
So cortisol, is that a fight or flight? Is that like
Yeah.
related to adrenaline?
Yes, it's
Okay.
related to adrenaline, cortisol. It basically, when your body's in a state of alarm, it's generating these chemicals, cortisol and adrenaline.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to get that out of your system. And when these children see their parents fighting or hear their parents fighting, their cortisol and adrenaline goes up. And then they go to school the next day, and that's still in their systems. And the way it affects them is it affects their hippocampus, which is a part involved in memory and emotional regulation. So their ability to remember things in school is really impaired, and their ability to regulate their own emotions is impaired.
Wow.
And they're going to school not prepared to be able to take in what the school is offering.
Oh my gosh.
And the parents don't know that.
They're stepping into this challenging environment that doesn't tend to embrace their needs as a Homo sapien in the first place, but they're walking in there compromised.
Right. And the parents are simply unaware that this is happening. They're thinking, oh, kids are resilient. We had a fight in front, but they'll bounce back. That's a myth.
I've always thought that I was so conscious and so aware and like doing so much better than my parents. But on that particular point, I now know that I missed the boat. My parents hid their friction. And I always was critical of them for that being like kind of fake, that they like we didn't know about the friction and the all their issues, that they kept this fake, like, Brady Bunch or Disneyland sort of front going. And I was critical of that. But somehow, even though my mom always said, you shouldn't argue in front of the kids, I never saw that as a smart way to protect your children. I saw it as like fake. So my kids, mom and I, we fought fairly regular, and we would yell, and there was a lot of, animosity and turmoil. And now looking back, I realized that my kids, they were in that crock pot, that they took that on, and it makes me want to like really reach out to them and like, let them know that that's maybe maybe they already know that that's something that they need to work on, is moving through that.
Right. Now, if the parents can argue in a way that is healthy, like using I statements and active listening and reflecting back and disagreeing, but then they can move toward resolution. That's good for the kids to see that.
Respect.
They learn how to argue with respect
Yes.
and move toward resolution. But your parents were wise in not exposing you to a lot of conflict. But there's a double-edged sword. The kids whose parents never argued and then get divorced, the kids are really confused by that because they didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
The kids whose parents argued, they saw it coming, and then actually it helped them deal with it better because they weren't so surprised. The ones whose parents never argued and they're suddenly, dad has moved out of the house, they're not prepared for that. They're devastated.
Yeah. My daughter always says, it was obvious that you guys had to separate. You weren't getting along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But my kids' mom and I, when we were together, I feel like we were great co-parents, while we were married, we were great co-parents, and then we continued that after. And whenever we would have a falling out, or we would be, having some difficult issue, we would always come back to, okay, we're on the same team, right? Let's remember, even though we're having this hard fight, it always was helpful to remember that our ultimate goal was the same, and that was to care for our children and support our children. And that would put us on the same page. And so does it seem like a good thing to address maybe the two extremes of divorce? Like my kids' mom and I, it was kind of a mutual decision to get divorced. It wasn't like scandalous, right? Where like one person gets caught with another, lover, and like it didn't blow up. It was a mutually agreed, gentle letting go. And actually, separating was in some ways the best thing ever for our relationship because the pressure was off, the expectations were off. We could just, you know, that took that helped it to function in some ways. But I just have this idea of looking at the difference between parents who are, you know, have issues with each other, but generally are mutually supportive, and like versus like the other extreme where it's a battlefield and everything happens in court, and the parents are absolutely polarized, and the children are maybe forced to choose one parent or the other. So, you know, of course, it's better if you can remember that you're on the same team, but that doesn't always go that way.
Right. Well, we have a program for high conflict divorces called High Conflict Solutions, and that's a 8-hour program with online with video scenes of parents fighting. And in the worst case scenarios, you'll have parents. One parent works to alienate the child from the other parent, to get to the child where they don't want to see the other parent.
Yeah.
And that does horrible things to the children. And it's more likely to happen if one parent feels really betrayed by their partner, and, you know, like they had an affair and therefore they're a bad person, and the children would be better off if they never saw this bad person again. So they have some reason to want to alienate, but that's about as bad as it gets for kids, is to be alienated where they lose contact with one of their parents and no longer love them and believes their parent doesn't love them.
Yeah.
But that can be prevented by starting to use these skills earlier in the process, so you never get to the point where the battles are that intense and you're saying unforgivable things to the other parent.
Right. Right. Yeah. It seems like it's just sad. Well, what comes up for me thinking about a parent being completely alienated, because I felt like that happened to me on some level at one point. And if we're going to look at our mammalian natures and our like history as hunter gatherers and as tribal people, there's like you spoke to like two of the, you know, greatest fears in our life. One of them being divorce for a child, and I feel like some of the most primal fears that we have as Homo sapiens is being banished from the tribe. And basically being banished from your children is in effect, you know, being pushed out of the family is basically being banished from your immediate tribe. Mm-hmm. So I just feel like I hope everyone can understand how profound that is, and like do everything they can to keep that from happening. I mean, you know, and yeah.
We're often at our worst selves during divorce because there's two huge fears that are being activated. One is the fear of loss of our children, and the other one is fear of loss of our finances. And you're afraid of being economically destitute by the divorce, and you're afraid of losing your children. And when we're afraid, we're not acting on our best selves, and we're in our fight or flight mode. We're more likely to counterattack and be aggressive when we're afraid. Yeah. So if you can, during this process, if you can share with your partner when you're feeling fearful, like when you were talking about with your girlfriend about being scared, that united you because you're both feeling the same thing. So you can get down to your vulnerability with each other, your common fears. You can get past the attack that comes with fight or flight.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the opposite of like you having aggression polarize you is to come together in acceptance and love.
Yeah.
However you get there, whether it's from your online workshop or from, you know, taking time to get away together and have quiet and space to shed all the stress of our normal lives and maybe realize, bringing people together. That's,
Yeah, we want parents to be able to teach their children to express their feelings, because that's, you know, the more emotionally literate you are, the healthier you are. And we have a new children's program that teaches where children are introducing these concepts and having a conversation with an animated alien figure called Orby. And the kids are learning these evidence-based skills to express their feelings, and we want them to be doing it with their parents. So the parents are learning at the same time and learning about skills they can encourage their children to use, like the deep breathing when they're stressed out, like expressing gratitude when they're feeling really down, like how to change their thinking when they have lots of troubling thoughts. And the children are learning these skills by watching these kids, teaching them when they interact with this animated alien called Orby. And it has a huge effect on kids and parents, because they can then start talking to each other about their feelings.
So what do you think about kids that are, by their nature, they don't share their feelings? Like throughout their life, I know some kids are major emoters, and there's extremes, right? Some kids are constantly sharing their feelings, constantly emoting, and then some are like Stonewall, like show no emotion, don't share their process, won't tell you if they're feeling, if they had a hard experience.
Yeah, if they're feeling unsafe, they don't want to express vulnerable feelings if they're not feeling safe.
Yeah.
So if they're in a situation where they're threatened and they're feeling unsafe, they also may not be expressing their feelings because they have no models for that. They've never been taught that. Quite often, and more schools are now teaching that in the early grades, which is a really good thing, social emotional learning programs. But in many families, they're not growing up hearing parents express feelings, so they don't know how to do that. So when parents can start to express feelings to the children and to each other, that's the best way for the kids to learn, for the parents to model that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes kids don't express feelings like worry and fear and anger if the parents are acting really vulnerable and frightened themselves. They don't want to burden their parents with their own feelings. So they're kind of taking care of their parents. You're more likely to see that with older kids, 10 to 17. They don't want to stress their parents more, so they kind of take care of it, and they just bury their own feelings in the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's. I feel like I'm so glad that you're here today, because this is such a profound topic. It's like the whole stitch in time thing, a little bit of education, a little bit of energy put toward understanding what's going on is going to make everybody's life better and make for a better future as you become grandparents. And it just seems like such a helpful thing. I'm just going to real quick, in case somebody just tunes in the middle of this, I'm just going to say we've got Dr. Dawn Gordon here, parenting specialist, and the person who started this awesome online parenting courses, divorce-education.com or childreninbetween.com, and also parentingwisely.com, and then another one which was
childreninbetweenforkids.com.
Okay, cool. And then there was one more,
highconflictsolutions.com.
highconflictsolutions.com. Yes. Such important work, and I'm so glad you're doing this. What would you have to say? So I've got this amazing book, and it's a Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century by Weinstein and Haying. And it's kind of like my new Bible, like because I'm kind of a hunter-gathererist by nature. Like, I made this joke on my radio show that I was running for president on the hunter-gatherer ticket, because whenever I have trouble like making sense of what's going on in our society, I always go back to well, what would the hunter-gatherers do? Or, realizing that that's mostly who we are, with this veneer of industrial man superimposed. We handed a hunter-gatherer a smartphone, and we're just like, all right, good luck. But in that book, A Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, this husband and wife team make a very strong statement for the benefits of monogamy. from a biological and evolutionary standpoint, that monogamy is a very healthy, solid structure with which to raise the best children, which in turn will, affect our evolution and our health in a good way. So they're very pro monogamy, and I guess that would also entail, pro keeping the families together. So do you, you're in the business of helping people that are kind of already in trouble, or their marriage is coming apart. Do you ever speak at all to how to keep from getting divorced in the first place, which would go back to like mate selection? Like, how do you select a mate? How do you know it's the right mate? Do you go there? Because I know it's definitely before you step in with your teaching.
Right. Yeah, we do address that. I have a colleague, Dr. Bill Doherty, University of Minnesota, who does a piece at the end of the program about, are you sure you want to get a divorce? He's encouraging people to work on the relationship. And he says, the grass is not greener. You carry yourself into the next relationship. If you don't work on yourself, you're going to have problems again. And divorce is preventable, and I wish I could devote a lot of my career to that, because keeping the family together is the healthiest thing for the family and for society. But some of the things that parents will tell us who go through this Children Between course, if I had only taken this course a couple months earlier, I would have worked harder on my marriage, because I'm learning skills that really help in the relationship.
Like a couple months makes all the difference.
A couple months.
Like it's irreversible, or like they've already committed to.
I think once you file for divorce, you're kind of like on this no exit highway where you're rushing toward the court hearing. And if you have an attorney that's encouraging that, the system encourages you to do this in a speedy way. Instead of stop, take time, get some counseling. They encourage you to hurry up and get it done with. And parents say, if I just gotten this course earlier, I would have worked harder. Sometimes parents will find the course before they file, and that's going to be most effective if they take the course before they file for divorce. But usually they don't know about it. The courts require you to take a course like this when you file for divorce, so they don't know about it until they file.
Yeah, I remember I took a course. I remember at the courthouse, like down in the county here in Medford. It was pretty mellow. So they require you to take a parenting course after you've already filed for divorce. But it's
right.
It's specifically kind of like, well, I know you offer court-approved courses.
Yes.
So that's part of your bread and butter.
Right. In Jackson County, that's the only, if you get divorced now in Jackson County, you'll be using Children Between online. There is no other option. So that you'll get that course.
Your course.
Yeah. And there's other, like Cook County, which is Chicago. That's what you'll get if you file for divorce. You'll be taking that course.
So did I do your course 8 years ago? Or
Jackson County was still offering an in-person course 8 years ago, so you may not have had the option to take it online.
Oh, that's right. I was in like a little auditorium.
That wasn't my course.
At the courthouse.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. Well, that's really cool that within your program, your online teaching for how to do right by the children through divorce, you actually have somebody who specializes in how to keep the family together.
Yes. And Bill Doherty is a marital and family therapist, and he teaches those skills like active listening to your partner, so they felt heard. If people did more of that in their relationships, they probably wouldn't be getting divorced. A fellow named Warren Farrell in California teaches weekend workshops on people who are at the brink of divorce. They're filing, they're getting out of their marriage. And the main thing he teaches in that weekend workshop is to be able to reflect back what your partner is saying to you when you're being criticized. If your partner's criticizing you and you can reflect back what they're saying, you're probably going to stay together, because they want to know that you're taking them seriously and you're hearing them, instead of reacting defensively by counterattacking or minimizing what they say or changing the topic or what about this, you do this. Then the person's not being heard. So that's a fairly simple skill that marital therapists teach that makes a huge difference in improving intimacy.
So what I heard you say at the start of what you were just sharing was that you reflect back, like I hear that you're being critical of my behavior right now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Or I hear I hear you're angry with what I did.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's like along the line of like, instead of thinking about what you're going to say next, just staying present with what the person's saying right now.
Right. And it's human nature to defend ourselves, to counterattack, to minimize. It's human nature. But to stay present and to make yourself vulnerable by asking for more, by listening, the other person is going to become less aggressive when you do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, it's the opposite of like throwing more fuel on the fire. It's like it's kind of like putting the brakes on in an argument, like chilling it out.
And you have to, we teach, one of the skills we teach in the Children Between course is self-talk. You need to do a lot of self-talk by telling yourself, take some deep breaths, rehearse ahead of time what you're going to say. I'm feeling this. How do I best say it so my partner can hear me without being defensive? Mm-hmm. And so you do this self-talk to get ready to speak instead of just doing it whatever comes to mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can say that, throughout our marriage, we had this really cool 80-something-year-old lady in Mount Shasta who was a counselor, and my partner and I, we would meet with her and talk about, what's going on with our relationship. And every time we left that meeting with that therapist, we felt a renewed interest in making it work and like understanding the other person. And then even when we came to Ashland, we had a therapist here, and we met with him a few times about our the fact that we were separating, but trying to be conscious about it. Go ahead.
I had the same experience, and I was in couples therapy in my second marriage, and it was great. That's what he had us do, is to speak to each other and talk about our feelings to each other. And my wife at the time grew up in a family where her parents never argued. She never heard them express feelings, and so she didn't know how to do that. So when she learned to express her feelings with the therapist's insistence in the sessions, it really made a difference, because I can then hear her and I could respond to that, and I got better at expressing my feelings. And so we went from having been separated and living apart to getting back together and improving our marriage, and that helped for a number of years.
Nice, yeah. And did you still have kids at that point?
Yeah, we had a daughter together, and I had a son from a previous marriage, and so she was a stepmom, and so we had a daughter, there are two children that were involved.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, good work. Dr. Don Gordon, we're coming toward the end here, and how about we bring it back to the theme of putting your children first without putting yourself second. And I know we've been speaking to this the whole time, but it seems like kind of a good way to bring it back full circle. I guess just what we've spoke to most of the time here is how parents can learn skills to better communicate with each other and to interact with each other, and by setting a stage, by demonstrating a healthy relationship, that's what they're teaching their children.
Mm-hmm. And putting yourself first is, doing things like getting out in nature, getting exercise, eating healthy, getting good sleep, socializing with friends. All of those things are necessary to take care of ourselves. So then when we're with our children, we're more likely to be present with them and to be able to be emotionally attuned with them. So it's really necessary. When you're flying on an airplane, they tell you when the oxygen drops down, you put your mask on first before you help your child.
Totally.
It's the same thing.
Well, I think you just helped me come up with the mirror image book of the book that the title I was talking about. Like I came into this interview with putting your children first without putting yourself second. But this is putting yourself first so you can put your children first.
Yes.
Yeah, funny. Um, yeah, like it. Well, boy, I'm a huge fan of the 12-step program and all of the amazing work that the 12-step program is doing all over the world. And like thinking like, what would the world be like if there wasn't Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous and all the people that have come out of addiction and are now leaders in society. And your work seems, equally as important of, helping, just showing up for parents in maybe one of the most confusing and difficult phases of their whole life, and offering guidance and a return to the heart, all of this beautiful stuff to give them better health and peace of mind, and to ensure that their children are going to move through this with the most healing and the least damage. Super, super cool work, Don.
Oh, thanks. Well, you're doing the same kind of work, Dave, through your podcast and your book. So we're on the same path together.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. When you started rattling off the things to do to take care of yourself, I'm like, hey, those are chapters in my original book, Wake Up Laughing. Oh. Totally. Yeah. And it's really cool that making conscious decisions to take care of ourselves and thus our family really, it's not necessarily harder. I don't know. It's just like eating healthy. You can eat incredibly delicious foods that are highly nourishing as opposed to eating the, I guess, super delicious, super unhealthy foods. So it's not so much a sacrifice. It's just a matter of having the education and the commitment to living healthier and making it a priority. So again, Dr. Don Gordon, I'm Dave Munson. Dr. Don Gordon is a parenting specialist. He's got some websites, divorce-education.com or childreninbetween.com, parentingwisely.com, and those will all lead to all the other websites. And thanks for coming on the show, Don. It's good to link up.
Yes, it is, Dave, and I hope you're very successful in getting your podcast out there. I really like the way you think and the kind of work that you've done.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Same to you. All right, let's keep on doing the good work. And boy, gosh, there's no shortage of work in this country, is there?
No.
Unfortunately, we would love to put ourselves out of business, but there's lots of work, lots of room to do good. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Please share this with your friends. Why not? Let's all get better together. All right.